Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. Doug Lesmerises, Nathan Baird, and we are wrapping up the ultimate Ohio State draft. It is over. We're not drafting anymore, but we're talking about it, Nathan. And we are talking about the contributions that our tech subscribers made. I asked them, it was some of the most homework I've ever asked the tech subscribers to do, which was try to rank all these draft prospects in some kind of order. So I sent them two separate lists, Nathan, of 20 names that I based off our own draft. So initially I sent them the top 20 names from our draft, and you guys have listened to that. Hopefully this podcast maybe won't make sense if you don't listen to the previous two, where Nathan, Steven, and I drafted the top 16 all-time Ohio State first-round draft picks, and then the next 16. We drafted 32 guys of the 90 first-round picks in Ohio State history. I sent the top 20 that we did, Nathan, to the texters. I had them rank them. I took the top 8 out, and then I sent them the 12 remaining names and 8 new names again and had them do it a second time, and I got their top 16. And then people said, please stop. Why are you doing this to us? People were just, and I knew it at the time, and there was an impossible way to do it, but I do appreciate texts like this, Nathan. This survey, I hate you. I started off, Buckeye Talk, I hate you. I started off just randomly sliding names around because it was too much to do, but then I got interested and spent 40 minutes studying the players with whom I was not familiar. I loved the task, but I don't think I would spend this much time on another one. That's Kurt Norman in Charleston, South Carolina. And I both love that and apologize to you, Kurt. So that's what we want to do here. We want to talk about some of the differences, reflect on our own draft, Nathan, but we're also going to predict. And let's actually start with the predict. Ohio State right now leads college football with the most first-round draft picks ever. They have 90. This feels like a thing, Nathan, where you are in the supermarket, if people still go to the supermarket, and they say the 1,000th customer will win a shopping spree. Somebody is going to be the 100th first-round pick in Ohio State history. And we, Nathan, are going to try to figure out when that will be and who it will be. But how big a deal do you think that will be? Is it something that will be much talked about going into that draft? Is it something that the draft coverage on ESPN and the NFL Network will stop and make a huge note of, holy moly? Or is it just a number, man?
I think it'll be a big deal on our beat. I think it'll be a big deal for Ohio State. I don't know how much ESPN or NFL Network will make a big deal about it. I'm sure they might mention it in passing. This is the 100th, and they are the first team, the first program to get to 100. I think those things will be notable. How much of a big deal they'll make about it, I don't know. But I think Ohio State will make a big deal about it, and I think they should make a big deal about it because you're looking for every thing that separates you in these recruiting wars. And when you can go into, it's one thing if you can go in and say, we develop NFL players. Well, a lot of programs do that. Like we develop NFL Pro Bowl players. Like a lot of programs do that. But if you can go in and say, we have the first program, one program has ever developed 100 NFL first round picks, and it's us. I think that's a more tangible thing. When you can start to narrow down those arguments that you want to make and have them be very tangible, I think that helps you when you walk into those living rooms and when you're at those fields in the summer and when kids are coming to see you. So I think it's something that Ohio State will probably pounce on and market itself behind, and I think they'd be smart to do that.
I want Columbus to host the NFL draft. Timed to this. The NFL draft used to always be in New York. Since I decided to move it around, it was in Chicago for 2 years. I actually covered it in Chicago one of those years because I covered it the year that Ohio State had everybody drafted in the 2016 draft, and Joey Bosa and Ezekiel Elliott and Von Bell and Darren Lee and all those guys. They then went to Philadelphia. They went to AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, outside Dallas. Did it there. They did it in Nashville. They did it in Cleveland, and Cleveland kind of got the shaft a little bit with the COVID stuff, and it wasn't nearly the thing that it should have been. They did it in Vegas. They did it in Kansas City, this most recent draft. The next draft is in Detroit. The draft after that is in Green Bay. So that's going to be centered around Lambeau Field. They did it in Arlington, centered around a stadium. They have not yet awarded the 2026 and 2027 NFL drafts. The two cities that have been bidding and not getting picked the last couple of years are Nashville again and DC. So my guess is DC is going to get one of these new ones. The idea of having an NFL draft in a college city might sound weird, except it's Ohio. And Columbus has actually found, Columbus had an NFL team in the 20s, and then they disbanded in 1922. Columbus is foundational to the beginnings of the NFL. Now, you just gave it to Cleveland. I get that. You could maybe do something at the Hall of Fame some year if you wanted to really have it in Canton itself. I could see you doing that. But I don't think this is completely crazy. And the idea of, hey, college football is the pipeline that fuels the NFL. Hey, the NFL can be like, hey, college football, man, everyone's coming after you. Should the players be employees? Whatever. Let's celebrate college football. Let's celebrate our feeder system. And to do that, we are holding the draft in one of the largest, most historic stadiums in the country, at the home of a program that has fueled the NFL more than any other. And we will be in Columbus to celebrate the 100th Ohio State first-round pick ever. It's probably going to be 26 or 27. I feel like I want to call somebody in Columbus and tell them to try to do this. There's a lot of stuff that comes up. Columbus bids on stuff. They get the women's Final Four. They're regional. They're an early round site for the NCAA tournament. They do some stuff. This would be huge. I was just talking to somebody the other day about like, hey, I think Columbus is like trying to build more hotels and stuff so you can host stuff like this. It's quit giving everything to Indianapolis. Now, if it would rain, it would be kind of a pain. Nathan, do you know anybody at the Chamber of Commerce, at the Columbus Sports Commission? Can we make a call and plant the seed? Because I get it. The NFL doesn't want to go to college towns all the time. But if you're ever going to do it now in this place for this reason.
I don't think it's crazy, but I think it's highly unlikely. And it's because of what you mentioned that, I don't know that they're going to stoop down and go to a college town, which I think would be their mentality. And I think of the NFL draft is sort of the way the Major League Baseball All-Star game is. It gets passed around to the entire league to some extent, or at least everybody in the league that wants it, because it's a chance to showcase your franchise, showcase your city, showcase your stadium sometimes, all of those things. So I think as much as it might make sense to have it in Columbus, I think you would probably have a big portion of the NFL that would strongly object to having it in a college town, unfortunately. But should Columbus fight for it? Maybe.
Put it on the radar. Have a meeting about it. People love having meetings. All right. So as we're trying to get the NFL draft to come to Columbus, we have to try to figure out what year it should come, because we do kind of want it to coincide with the 100th pick. So when will it be? What year will it be? And then we are going to say what player it will be. Who will win the shopping spree? We have to have some context here. They're at 90 right now. So I think, is it fair to say, Nathan, the real discussion is, will it be 3 drafts from now in 2026, or will it be 4 drafts from now in 2027? Is that the first thing you have to figure out? Is that a dividing line in your mind?
Yes. And I actually think that it might be that 2027 might be, you could argue that 2027 would be the earliest. It all depends on how much of a haul you think they're going to get of first round talent out of this next draft, because we know there's going to be a ton of players go to the draft in this next one. But as we already did on Buckeye Talk, we had a podcast predicting the 2024 NFL draft, and you and Steven and I were pretty varied in how many first round picks we think this next group would have. So that could take up, in my estimation, it took up a big chunk. And so 2027 was the year that I came up with. But I could also see someone saying, well, I really think they're only going to get like, if you're only getting 2 or 3 per year, then maybe even 2027 or 28 is when it would happen.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I am holding us to the picks we made on that previous podcast we did right after the NFL draft.
You have to, yeah.
On that podcast, you and Steven each predicted 5 first rounders in 2024. I predicted 3. So that's kind of a difference.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that and trying to think of a 3-year cycle, the thing when you look at Ohio State history, and this makes sense, is there are big years where they have a big number of first-round picks. Both times that Ohio State had 5 first-round picks in recent times, in 2016 and in 2006, they had 0 first-round picks the year before. That really, it's like, it just so happens that a bunch of our talent was in a class, or there was a guy or two who could have gone and stayed, and that, there's a 4th-year guy that could have been a 3rd-year guy, and that you kind of build up to it. Unless you're Bama, you're not stacking 5 first-rounders back-to-back years. So the question is, as we think about the math here, is can they get 10 first-round picks in the next 3 years? In a 3-year cycle, can you have 10 first-round picks? Because to have it happen in 26, the answer has to be yes. Otherwise, we're into 27, or maybe we're even into 28. In the last 20 years, I looked at the 3-year cycles. Okay, how many first-rounders? They've hit it once. Have they had 10 first-round picks in a 3-year cycle? And it's in 2018, and it's based off the 5 first-round picks in 2016, and then they had 5 more in 17 and 18 combined. Every other time, even the peak years have been surrounded by some, quote, down years, by 0 or 1 or 2 first-rounders. So if we're asking Ohio State to get to 10 first-round picks in the next 3 years, Nathan, we are asking them to do something that they've really only ever done once before. And it's a big ask. I just want to make sure that the listeners understand, because you could be like, they got 3 a year. It's like, they can get 10 in 3 years. It's like nope. It's really difficult. How difficult do you think it is? When you were trying to think about this, does 10 in 3 years seem like doable, especially when you're starting with, you think, 5 in 2024, or does it seem pretty extraordinary?
It would still seem extraordinary, but that doesn't mean it isn't doable. And we have to remember, just as we did with the recent conversation about Ohio State's national championship expectations, you have to emphasize the most recent part of their history, because Ohio State recruits since the Urban Meyer era started. It's just a different machine now, and the way that they attract talent and put that talent to the NFL is a little bit different. And the other thing I would remind you about is we also now have started to see 2 things that are linked. We have reasonable certainty that if you are the starting quarterback at Ohio State, you will be a first-round pick. That's happened 3 times in a row now. So it just depends on what year that could happen. But the other thing is, they are about to have, we all, I think, picked both Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka to be first-round picks. That was 2 of my 5, 2 of Steven's 5, 2 of your 3, I believe. So that'll be 5 in 3 years just from the receiver room. That's another position where they are just churning out legitimate first-round NFL guys. Rookie of the year and a guy who finished 3rd. You got a guy who fell all the way to 20th, even after having the massive second year that he did because of injury. And then now 2 guys on deck who seem to be just ready to very naturally fall in the line there. So it's in the same way that wide receiver is at times lifting the recruiting ranking above what the impact is for the whole roster. The receiver room right now is also lifting up the overall draft haul here at a time when they're having trouble producing first or second day NFL talent at any defensive position. They're just cranking the receivers into the NFL as fast as they can get them.
I do think I would tell the Columbus Chamber of Commerce to shoot for 26. As difficult as this is, I think I would, when you take the things into account that you just said, that there's just going to be some receiver guys. If you think the cornerback thing is restarting a little bit, you throw in the quarterbacks, and it's not a guarantee, but it's I don't know. Do you think that at least one of McCord and Devin Brown might be that, right? Or even as we're talking by the 2026 draft, I guess Aaron Noland would not be eligible yet, but Lincoln Kienholz gets it going and as a 1 year. Do you at least count on one quarterback in there? I do think, as much as we're saying, hey man, 10 in 3 years, they've done it once. I think we're talking about 10 in 3 years. because I feel like I have some names, and then there's and it happened. We're not going to redo the whole thing we did. If you guys think this is interesting, go back and find it. You'll find it late April after the actual draft. We made the predictions for the 2024 draft. You guys went to 5. We talked about could they tie the record of 6. I only went to 3, but there's so many guys who are maybes, who have like a 30% chance. And then if you have 5 guys you think have a 30% chance to go in the first round, it's like, well, I don't know. It's probably like 1.5 guys. So I'm thinking about it of if I have 3 and 24 and I have maybe 3 and 25, but I'll also give myself one of those 2 years, they'll get to 4 with a guy that I'm not banking on, but somebody else will hit. So that's 7. And then I have 3 in 26. So it's 7 over the next 2 years and 3 in 26, and I'm at 10. So my year is 2026. Is your year 2026 or is it 2027?
So I did push all the way to 2027, even with having 5 guys picked in 2024. And maybe after being that loose with it for that year, maybe I got overly conservative for 2025. And also I think for both of those years, I was honing in more on guys that I thought the super strong chances, as opposed to maybe somebody from this group. Though I agree with you that definitely exists, and I think at maybe edge rusher was the position where I thought it's the most likely that they will produce a first round pick again in 25 or 26 or both, for all we know. But I just couldn't mark someone down for that. So I had 2 each in 25 and 26, and then 27, maybe very, very high in the 27 draft, the 100th guy coming off the board.
Okay. I think that's interesting. And I'll be curious to see who your guy is, because it could be a top 5 pick and he's the 100th. Like that would be, he get a shopping spree and all the money from being a top 5 pick.
Yep.
Okay. We're going to do 2 things on the rest of this podcast. We're going to mark it down who will be the 100th first round pick in NFL history. And then at the end, we will compare the top 16 in the Texters Ultimate Draft to what our top 16 was. We'll do all that next on Buckeye Talk.